Well, welcome to another episode of the Addy Hour. It's been my pleasure to continue to engage with you all in these conversations. And today I'm really excited to welcome two special guests to the program to talk about a really important topic. Our first guest is Stacy D Stewart, and Stacy is the president and CEO of the March of Dimes, where she has been in that role since 2017. And she heads the organization that really is leading the fight for the health of moms and babies. Prior to joining the March of Dimes, she was actually the president of the United Way, the nation's largest nonprofit organization, and served in that role even prior to being president in that organization, was also the executive vice president of community impact leadership and learning, where she developed global partnerships to advance community impact in more than 40 countries. So definitely a person who's had a lot of impact in a lot of ways. She's a business veteran who's had a lot of different senior roles, has a background in finance and investment banking, and continues to serve on lots of different national boards and in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. So I'm thrilled, excited, and honored to welcome Stacy Stewart to the program today. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Definitely looking forward to the conversation. Our next guest is Angelina Spicer. Angelina is a comedian, social media influencer, and accidental activist, a cum laude graduate of Howard. Angelina is known for her deep and authentic comedy. She's had just outstanding success, has been, her videos and her content has been viewed more than 90 million times in more than 45 countries. She was a regular sketch performer on Jimmy Kimmel Live and on Conan, has also appeared on Ellen and on The Real. And in 2017, Angelina also became an outspoken advocate for maternal mental health after her own diagnosis and hospitalization with postpartum depression. But in addition to that, she's also been working with lawmakers in California and on Capitol Hill to implement laws to support early maternal health. Has worked with lots of different organizations, including Cedars-Sinai Hospital, Postpartum Support International, the World Health Organization, and others, and is currently in production on The Push for Permission, a feature-length documentary that uses comedy to empower women to advocate for themselves and to normalize postpartum depression. So I'm grateful and honored to welcome Angelina to the program today as well. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. And as we talked offline before we even started, my goal today is to see if I can keep up with the energy in the room, so to speak. I'm really excited and honored, though. But I've been really looking forward to this for several different reasons, which I've alluded to already. One, just because of the impact and the influence that both of you have as Black women in our society. I think that's so important for us to elevate and to continue to amplify. And just the important topics that you've both been talking about and the impact you've had policy-wise as well. I think that's really impressive. The other piece that I think we'll get to as we go through is just also your roles as strong Black women. And we may be able to dive into that conversation and talk about the mixed reactions to that term itself, the pluses and the minuses that come with that. But I think it's important for us to be able to acknowledge that here as well. But as my listeners know, I always like to check in and see how people are doing overall. So with all the roles that you both have, I imagine you have very busy schedules. I just wanted to see how you're doing today and how you continue to balance that on a day-to-day basis. So Stacy, if we could start with you.
Yeah, no, it's rare that even someone asks in a sort of a genuine, authentic way. And people always say, how you doing? And you just kind of say, great. And it may not always be great. So thank you for asking. I actually am doing pretty well today. I'm a little tired from watching some Olympics, and my bedtime gets pushed back to earlier and earlier. So if it's past 10 o'clock now, I'm like kind of exhausted the next day, which is kind of bad. But it's actually been great. And I guess it's interesting that we're talking about mental health things today, because I think what's been weighing heavily on my mind with the Olympics are just the incredible issues of Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka and Sha'Carri and all of these Black women who are stellar, like world-class athletes, and just the level of, if they're feeling the pressure of day-to-day life, just imagine what the rest of us normal people feel, but just how interesting it is that the theme of mental health among Black women athletes is really showing up in a big way. So anyway, I know that's not exactly on the topic, but it is around mental health generally. Yeah. So that's actually been ironically heavy on my mind, but I'm doing great, and everything's good, and it's summer. So yeah, it's hot, but it's good. Yeah.
glad to hear that. And I appreciate the way that you're honest in that, that answer as well. And even some of the topic, I mean, you're talking about paying attention to your own sleep too. So we are going to have an episode coming up just talking about the importance of sleep and how that intersects with our mental health. And it's great to hear that you're attentive to that in your own life. And yeah, as you mentioned with our Black female athletes, all the pieces that are coming to light now, which I think it's really important for us to be able to talk about. And in some ways, we know those things have been there for a while, but we haven't had the space or the opportunity to really shed light on it like we should. So I think it's challenging and a struggle for many, but also an opportunity for us to really be supportive of these athletes and open up the conversation much more than it's been in the past. So I appreciate you bringing that in as well.
Yeah.
Angelina, what about you? How are you doing?
Well, I am currently on my #postpartum revolution road trip. It's my sort of missionary work to take postpartum depression literally on the road across the country, raising awareness and shooting my documentary about postpartum depression, meeting with lawmakers. And this is my first tour, both as a comedian, as an entertainer. And when you ask, how am I doing? I'm doing very, very, very well. I am so overwhelmed with purpose right now and overwhelmed with the support that it's being made very clear to me that I am doing what I was placed here to do.
Wow.
And I'm just very thankful for God's yes and of my request. And, I've been on the road, so I've been eating like crazy and not sleeping well and managing schedules and panelists and shows and everything. But today was the first day that I took time for myself to work out for the first time since my tour.
Wow.
And I lifted a little weights. I got my jump rope in and I feel great. Thank you for asking.
Oh, of course. And thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think there's so much in what you shared as well. Even in the last episode that we had, we were talking about just that aspect of purpose and how that impacts our mental health. And it sounds like in a lot of ways, even though this is the first tour, maybe not the first time that you're in your purpose, but it sounds like it's a whole nother level that everything is kind of just tying in together, which I think is great. So
good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Must feel fulfilling and gratifying in a lot of ways. To follow up briefly, though, even with your answer, I'm curious because you mentioned all the busyness of the tour, too. Yes. So it's not that what you're doing is stress-free or easy. So how are you staying in that place of where you're able to answer and say, I'm doing really well amidst all of the scheduling and traveling and all? Is that because you're doing your purpose? Are there other things that you have put in place that are allowing that to happen? I'm curious.
I'm a planner. And making plans, executing my plans are always sort of my checks and balances on how I execute things. So that helps my peace of mind going in if I know that I have a plan. But because this is my first tour and I'm traveling with a crew of 10 camera people and sound people, and we're traveling in a 40-foot RV across the country, there's a lot of variables, but because of the women that I'm meeting in each of these cities and because of the openness that lawmakers have to meet with me and the yeses that I'm getting, I'm taking chances, but I'm getting yeses that meet the risks. That feels good. That's fueling me because I feel like, okay, I'm taking a risk and it's actually working. Yeah. Okay. I guess we're doing this. Yep. This is it. Okay. Yep. So yes, that's how I'm managing.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I mean, in a sense too, you're getting that, not to get too much into my psychology and neuroscience, but that positive reinforcement of taking that risk and then seeing it come to fruition and then being willing to take that next risk and then just having that feedback. So I think that's outstanding in a lot of ways. So
thank you.
And just to ad lib a little bit, how did the two of you come into contact together? I know you work together in different ways, but how did that story come about? Whoever
I'll let
wants to
take this question.
I'm trying to think, how did we, I think it was kind of maybe through social media. Well, first of all, I know, Angelina, you were connected with March Times out in LA anyway. And then was it just to kind of through social media and connecting, and then we got you involved in some stuff, and you were involved with March for Moms, which is another organization, and we're connected to them too. And then, what was it? It was pre-pandemic. So we had dinner together and we talked about like how we could do more together. I just think in some of these spaces where a lot of maternal health people are kind of coming together, especially around Black maternal health, we're all meeting new people and connecting with people and forming alliances and partnerships. And, we were, when Angelina first started talking about the postpartum revolution and like this whole effort to get this comedy special going, I don't think a lot of people really believed in it or felt like it was really important. And she really stayed on with this vision. I think I chipped in some money personally, very small. And then it's led to us kind of being in partnership with her on this whole tour thing and being so anyway, I think there are just a lot of, that's how it should really develop, is that like you start to meet people, expand, you grow. And, she's been such a passionate sort of and a very interesting voice in the space of maternal health that it made a lot of sense for us to figure out how we could be more supportive of her work and really partner so we could reach more women for sure. Yeah. But is that right? I'm missing something, aren't I? I don't know.
No, you're not, Stacey. I meet people on social media all the time. I don't always meet CEOs on social media. When I met a Black woman CEO from March of Dimes, I was like, what? Let me find out. So I wasn't going to say it, Stacey. That's why I allowed you to answer the question first, because I wasn't sure what we were actually going to say. But yes, Stacey and I met on social media.
She slid in my DMs, but not in a good way.
I didn't Stacey DMs. And I was so honored that she replied and that I felt a connection. And, I came to the March for Moms, and I usually participate every year and speak at their rally on the National Mall and participate in their advocacy day. But Stacey was like, we have to go to dinner. I want to take you to dinner. And we had dinner and we put on lipstick. We took our selfies. And I was just like, I felt so connected, but also left feeling like I want to be in partnership with March of Dimes because of Stacey. So I've been ringing the bells and advocating. I mean, even when we're not technically in partnership like we are right now on the #Postpartum Revolution road trip, I make sure at all of my events, I have March of Dimes resources for my moms and for folks that come to my events but aren't even expecting to be lectured about postpartum depression. I'm like, oh no, here, take a March of Dimes pamphlet. Here's some resources for you. I make sure that I lean into the work that they're doing with all of my events and all of my work that I do.
Yeah, that's great.
Amazing. Yeah,
I think that speaks to both, the authenticity that both of you have just in your interactions with each other and just how you come across. It seems like you really vibed off of that when you first interacted too and first met and have that common cause too. So it's really exciting to hear. I mean, all the important work that you're doing. You both allude to some of the pushback though that you got early on, and or people not believing in the mission. I'm just curious if you could elaborate on why that is, especially in this day and age when there seems to be more conversation about, but there's always still that pushback.
Yeah.
Where do you think that's coming from?
Well, I'll start, Angelina. I think, so there's pushback at a number of different things. I mean, I think, first of all, in the country, we weren't even having these conversations around maternal health generally, physical, mental, any kind of, women, because I think a lot of it is that women generally are not prioritized in this country the way we should be. And then certainly pregnant women are not. It's appalling, though, that in a society like ours, we wouldn't be putting as much priority on the lives of moms and babies. I mean, it's just striking. And we talk a lot about the fact that we are considered the most dangerous developed nation in the world in which to give birth now. How in the U.S. do we find that at any level acceptable, right? And so I think it's just been, I think what's happening is that the storytelling is beginning to break through. I mean, Angelina telling her story, Beyonce telling her story, Serena telling her story, or someone like a Charles Johnson telling his story about Kira, who died, in a hospital in LA. Once those storytelling we know is very powerful. So March of Dimes can be ringing the bell all day, and we have been talking about premature birth for a long time. But when those stories start to break through, it changes the whole narrative, it changes the public awareness. It sort of embeds itself in everyday conversation and people's consciousness in a way that organizations like mine can't always do. And so, now we've gotten to the point where I still don't think we're paying enough attention to it. I still don't think we're prioritizing in the way that it should be and dealing with it with the sense of urgency. But I definitely can say that we're at a different level of conversation about it and a different level of attentiveness. And I'm saying that from the perspective of Washington, D.C., where I think policymakers are starting to look at this very differently. So it just takes time. These things don't always happen overnight, but we certainly have made a lot of progress in my short time here at the March of Dimes, which is 4.5 years. Angelina, what do you think?
I realize that I have a unique voice in that I am, yes, a storyteller, but I'm also a volatile comedian. Okay. So that's where the pushback for me came with people, particularly organizations, not in the comedic world. I mean, I've gotten pushback on both sides, both on the organizational side and on the Hollywood side. Okay. So and I say organizational, I mean like nonprofits, policies, hospitals, brands, etc. On that side, there's pushback or hesitancy because I am a comedian and I can say whatever it is I want. And usually comics go off the rails. Sometimes, they can go off the rails and say crazy things, etc. So I'm a liability. I can be perceived as a liability on that side. For example, I have been fundraising for the Push for Permission documentary film that I'm currently crowdsourcing and putting together and producing. And I went to a hospital and we had an amazing pitch meeting. We showed them all of our assets, all of the production companies and networks that are interested in our film. And they're like, well, we don't know what you're going to say. So there was hesitancy from that. And, I'm an artist first. I don't want to be censored. But I also realize their obligation to their board and those that keep the organization functioning. So that's okay. What troubles me the most, I would say, is that Hollywood has pushed back in a way that reinforces the idea that, you don't matter unless you're a celebrity. You don't matter because, quote, no one knows who you are. And, I've had a number of production companies and networks tell me, well, why do we care that you have postpartum depression? We could ask Gwyneth Paltrow. We could ask
Chrissy Teigen or somebody. Yeah,
exactly. And regardless of my messaging is very different from a Beyonce, definitely from a Gwyneth Paltrow, because I'm a sister. And I have a comedic voice. So there's going to be some levity. There's going to be humor. There's going to be accessibility to my messaging. But in Hollywood, it doesn't matter because, quote unquote, no one knows who you are. So that's why I have just been so hyper-focused on my small donors and knocking on doors. And I'm just going to make the project that I want to see in the world. That's not triggering, that moms can see themselves in. And, and I've gained partnerships from organizations along the way. Hollywood is slow going, but it doesn't matter because I know that there's an audience for my work. And I know that there's value in it, whether or not I'm a celebrity.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing that level of candor too. Because I mean, so, speaking as a complete Hollywood outsider, just hearing you talk about that just makes it sound like there isn't an emphasis on the message.
Never. There's emphasis on the money. And I get it. listen, which is why I'm like, I will raise my own money to get my own message out there because I know that there's an audience for it. And if it's slow going, whatever it is, but we're doing it. So in motion, it's happening. And moms are reaching out to me in droves on social media and organizations. You know, the University of Nairobi reached out. Wow. I started working with WHO, University of South Africa. The Israeli government reached out and wants me to come and do trainings and with doulas and birth. Hollywood is not the end all be all. My mission is bigger than the nose.
Right.
It's really for the moms who are in distress, the moms to be. So I'm clear on my audience.
Yeah.
Hollywood's gonna be late. Let them be late. That's all right.
Yep. And the way you've talked about that too, it sounds like people are able to relate, and that might be an advantage of the non-Hollywood route anyway. That people can see you for who you are, not have to worry about stature. Not to say that you're not accomplished, but just say, okay, this is someone I can relate to. They've gone through it. I can connect to them, and I think there's just such a power that comes with that. I
agree, and you know, and I joke and I say, you know, nobody knows who I am, so people care more. You know. And I have less to lose. So I can talk about, you know, my broken lady parts and how much I hated my husband after I had my daughter because I'm not Serena Williams. You know, if Serena says that, she has endorsed.
She's going to break the internet, right?
The internet, and then that overshadows her tennis capability.
The message.
That's the message.
Yeah.
With me, nobody knows me. So girl, you're going to get the whole full spectrum of my business. And that makes it better, more accessible.
Yeah. But I also think that, you know, so let's get to the message, right? Which is that, I mean, how many people really do want to talk about mental health in a really sincere way anyway? How many people actually want to hear about it in a way that, you know, is not uncomfortable for them? I mean, it's just, you know, we are so, incapable right now, or incapable of really acknowledging the degree to which we completely underfund, under-resource, you know, the mental health challenges that so many people in this country face. I mean, we're talking about women who are pregnant or who give birth and who are new moms. But frankly, I mean, where we wouldn't even have an opioid crisis to the extent that we do if we didn't have a lot of people struggling with their mental health. And this is not new, right? Like we've been dealing with this for a long time. And I think it's just really something that we are trying to get this message. I mean, so to the question about pushback, I mean, I think a big reason why we do see the pushback is that people are just really, really struggling with even how to acknowledge these issues and talk about them and then frankly deal with them. And I do think that's why it's so important that people, you know, even if Angelina is whatever level of celebrity she wants to call herself, she still has a huge following. She has a huge voice. And I do think that it makes a big difference when people who are visible, who are in the public's eye, make themselves vulnerable to talk about these things, because it helps all of us. When I go to the Hill, if it helps me if a member of Congress has seen something on social media or a movie or a documentary, like then it makes it that much easier when we had to say, yeah, well, you know about that now, go ahead and give like however many millions of dollars we need to make sure that we have a 24-hour mental health hotline for new moms, or to make sure we have the resources, to make sure we have Medicaid coverage for women who are seeking those kinds of supports and need their coverage paid for, right? That it makes it that much easier. So it's all of these individual efforts that collectively roll up to something where we actually eventually have a movement that actually moves the needle and gets change to a place where we can get help to the people that really need it.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. And I'm so glad that you're able to harness the power of all those components, even when you're on the Hill, because I think that makes a huge difference. And I wanted to pick up on one of the things that you mentioned too, just in terms of us not knowing how to really engage and talk about it. Because even as you mentioned, I'm sure you all know the stats too. I mean, even before COVID, just thinking about mental health challenges in this country, 1 in 5 who are struggling with mental health in some shape or form. So when you break that down, most of us, either personally, ourselves, or family members or friends, know somebody who's struggling in some shape or form with mental health. but we still don't know how to engage with it always. And we still don't fully acknowledge it. So I'm even thinking about, as you're talking about on the Hill, I would imagine most of the people in those rooms are in some shape or form touched by mental health challenges. But does that mean that we engage in it or not? And so I'm curious as to how, as an organization, and Angelina, as you, how you've tried to address that piece of it too. Because a lot of times it's not far from where people live in a metaphorical sense, but in some ways there's this aspect of denial and not engaging.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things I just think it's not only everyday people and policymakers don't know how to engage. We even have healthcare providers that don't even know how to ask these questions. We have, 1 in 5 women who are pregnant who never get asked or screened for depression, like Angelina. And even more that don't get asked, during whether or not they're having any kinds of signs or symptoms of depression in the postpartum phase. When we look at maternal deaths overall, about 1 in 9 maternal deaths are actually attributed to issues around maternal health.
Wow.
So these issues are really life and death. And so part of what we've been saying is we need to make sure that everyone is aware of where these issues show up. We need to have everyone prepared to see certain warning signs or symptoms that could help someone get referred to the help they need. But we have to have our own healthcare professionals and the health and hospitals and healthcare providers absolutely focus on this and not willing to turn a blind eye to anxiety and stress, or just like chalking it up as, oh yeah, well, that's normal. There's always a little postpartum depression. Well, why should, even if that exists and we do see it, what onus or what responsibility do you have as a healthcare professional to screen for it, to refer women to the kinds of support that they may need, ask the question? And what we're really saying is some of those healthcare professionals aren't even the OBGYNs, where women may not be even going back in for their follow-up visits after the baby is born. Sometimes it's the pediatricians who need to be, and we're really glad pediatricians have this on their radar screen increasingly so, to be screening for it during well-child visits and things like that. So it's really kind of raising the awareness and making it more of a ongoing way of practicing medicine.
Right.
But knowing that our health is not determined by what happens in the doctor's office, mostly, we have to have family members, community members, clergy, and others willing to talk about these issues and help our fellow, especially new moms, if they see, if they are, showing signs that they're struggling, and make it available for them to acknowledge that they may be struggling and then find that help. I think Angelina's story around that is really powerful about, how she eventually got to the help that she needed. But thank God that she was able to be in the hands of a care provider who really paid attention to her, listened to her, and found her the care that she needed and recognized it, that she actually needed it. Because, we would want to have seen a worse outcome for Angelina or any other mother as a result of just giving birth to their child, right? I mean, no woman should have to struggle in that way. Yeah,
so important. It needs to be elevated all the way around, as you said, society-wise, healthcare-wise. And I love how you're, tying in all different aspects holistically, clergy, community members, we need to be on the same page together to really make sure the conversation doesn't get left. Angie, I wondered if you'd be able to share a little bit about what you learned in your journey too, and how that's informing the work that you're doing now, even as you're on tour.
Journey. I'm on a lot of.
That's true. The journey with your postpartum after the birth of your child.
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like I should give an abbreviated version of what happened.
Yeah, if you're willing, that'd be great.
Sure. No, I mean, I tell my business for a living, so let's have at it. So I am married. I like to tell people that because they think that, Black women don't get married, but I'm married. I've actually planned my daughter. That's another stereotype and stigma. So married, planned pregnancy, educated, middle class. And again, I'm a planner. So I planned for this life, but I didn't plan on developing postpartum depression. I had a doctor who I felt like really minimized my anxiety during my pregnancy. And it was a developing anxiety because I was marked high risk towards the end. And I didn't recognize it as anxiety because I didn't know what I was really experiencing in it. And I didn't know that it had a name. So, and there was so much preparation for the birth of my daughter that I didn't feel like I was put on the right track to be prepared for once she actually got here. So when I pushed her out, there's a picture of me that's going to be in the film where I just looked afraid. I looked scared. And that was the first time they laid her on me. It was the first time I looked into her eyes, and I was overwhelmed by my new responsibilities as her provider and protector. I was scared. And then, compound that with the sleepless nights, with the aching body parts, the diapers, my relationship with my husband was tested, like all relationships are after you have children. I just felt like everyone lied to me. I felt like my doctors lied by not preparing me for what was to come. I felt like my friends, my peers, no one was honest about what their bodies had gone through. I just felt like everyone was kind of muscling through and forgetting to tell me. So when I felt like I was experiencing depressive thoughts and intrusive thoughts, which I didn't know was a thing, luckily I was under the care of a therapist for years. I had seen my therapist before like 6 years before I decided to have my daughter. And so she knew my baseline. We had a very good relationship, and she was suggesting things to me over the months that I was literally trying to climb myself out. And one day at 8 months postpartum, I went to her office and she recommended that I check into a psychiatric facility. And most people would be afraid. I was excited to go. I was relieved.
It was time.
It was time. It was time to feel better. I wanted to feel better. I just didn't know how. And my therapist gave me permission to go to this place and be taken care of. And, all my meals were provided. It was a great time out that I didn't know that I could get as a new mom. And, and since then, I've just really been advocating for new moms, new families, new parents, and even women who are yet to become parents. I feel like we need to be honest with them about what this is really going to look like.
Yeah.
Because it's not what you think it's going to look like. It's not going to be horrible. It's not bad, but it's not what you think it's going to look like. So, and to your former point about the pandemic and the stressors of the pandemic, I know for myself, the lockdown, the quarantine and homeschooling made me feel triggered. I felt extremely panicked and worried, and I felt incapable all over again, incapable of mothering and incapable of balancing. And, my husband and I decided after a few months that it was time for us to send our daughter back to daycare because I just wasn't able to manage. But that was the best decision for our family at the time. And I needed the freedom to be able to say, I'm drowning, I can't do it. But there were a lot of moms who felt, the same symptoms of having postpartum depression during the pandemic.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And I appreciate you sharing that story as well. I mean, so many pieces that you're paying it forward in a sense too. Because even as you were talking to your story, talking about how you didn't have the language to know exactly what you were going through, even as someone who had already been in therapy. So I think that's a really critical point too, to make sure that people, as you've already done, are having those conversations ahead of time and know what to expect and how to move through it. Because even as, both sides are working simultaneously, even as you all are doing, trying to make sure the healthcare workers are providing that information.
Yes.
Having those who are going through it have that information as well. And so when the misses still happen, to be able to tackle it from both sides in a sense, I think is hugely important. Yes. And then everything you mentioned. Oh, go ahead, Stacey.
Well, one thing I want to say about what Angelina said is that I think that idea that so for a lot of, I'll just speak to my own experience because I didn't go through the level of postpartum depression that Angelina experienced, but I do think that there is something about becoming a new mother that is incredibly shocking. And I don't think anyone is ever, I can't imagine that anyone is, if you're well prepared for motherhood as soon as it hits, God bless you, right? Because I think it is such an you're literally having an out-of-body experience. And it's, I remember feeling like the same thing what Angelina said, which was they lied to me. Because I was, everyone says, oh, motherhood is so beautiful and wonderful and you're going to love it. And honestly, the first few days, weeks are so incredibly hard. It is hard. And this is for someone like me who didn't have to deal with as many of the mental health challenges. It didn't matter. It was incredibly difficult. And I was someone who had already, I had my kids really late. My first daughter was born when I was 38. And by then I'd been out in the work world and I'd done all these things in my career. And so to be home for 4 months at home by myself with my child who cannot speak to me, I cannot have a cogent conversation with this little child.
Yeah.
And then was I was I don't think I'll survive this. This is so hard. So I think, and then of course, all of your physiological changes are complicating how you process all this, all the lack of sleep, trying to eat healthy, eat it all, first of all. Right? It's just all sort of combined with each other into a whole, and then, and then you get, for a lot of women, you get past that first 3 months or first 6 months, whatever, and things start to they're still difficult. You're still not getting sleep, but it starts to kind of settle in. But I just think we've got to do a better job helping women prepare for motherhood in a very realistic way, so that things like Angelina, where you don't feel like you get hit by a 2x4 when a baby comes, you actually are prepared to say, okay, this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. And it's going to start second one when that baby comes in the hospital, when that baby's on your chest.
You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Time to engage the plan. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
I think that's so important that you're verbalizing and vocalizing that too. So people aren't surprised, even though I'm sure, there's no way, and obviously I can't speak from experience, no way to prepare completely. 100%. But at least to have the expectation that you won't be able to prepare completely.
Yeah.
And that there are some things that you can do to set yourself up for some level of success. And for me, had I known the information, I would have planned differently. I would have hired a postpartum doula.
Right.
I would have made sure that my husband, banked vacation days so that he could have stayed home, longer with me. Honestly, I would have taken a second job to pay for childcare. Because that's what I needed relief. So going in, knowing what you can handle and what resources you can call on, whatever it takes, you can at least engage the plan so that you're not so overwhelmed and so disengaged from your reality.
It's also this is where we look at the US and compare ourselves to other countries, right? In other countries, you do have midwives. And why don't we have a whole program where everyone, irrespective of income or anything, can access a doula during pregnancy and childbirth and even postpartum? Why don't we have the resources in this country to pay for that and make that available to any woman that may need it? Why don't we have paid family leave in this country, which is pretty standard in other countries, right? Why don't we provide, nursing and home visitation the way it exists in other countries? Why don't we have universal coverage so if women are experiencing mental health challenges, they have the resources? There are so many levels of where we have underinvested in our human capital that show up in all of the things that Angelina talks about in her own story that we see in the statistics around maternal and infant health. And frankly, I'm not saying writing a check and putting more money in these things actually eliminates the problem, because then we have the other issue, especially as it relates to Black and brown women, where just the basic effects of racism and discrimination impact us on a daily basis. And that skews the outcomes as well, disproportionately relative to women that look like me and Angelina. But having said that, a lot of this, and when you look at ways in which to address anti-racism and bias in this country, policy solutions are at the core of what we can start to do to reverse some of the impacts of what we've been experiencing over generations and that we're still living with. And frankly, to be in a country this wealthy and to not being provided the basic bare minimum for women as they're bringing a new life in the world is just simply unacceptable. I mean, it's why I think both of us are so passionate around, like, we can't live in this world and society and tolerate this. And we shouldn't tolerate for any length of time. Yeah.
Very well said. And I think the support isn't there. I think that's what Angelina was referring to and what you're articulating as well. Just it's so critical, but so lacking.
We need the policy support. That's a huge component of the work I do also. It's like, moms in California, I worked on legislation there to help with expanding screenings and also training physicians, because as Stacey mentioned, doctors and labor and delivery nurses and folks in L&D just in general may not know how to implement these trainings or these screenings. So there needs to be resources and time that's invested to make sure that they're able to now do this work. And also when red flags are raised, where do we send these moms? I was reaching out to my OBGYN at, 2 weeks after my 8-week checkup. Like, hey, I need more resources. I need help. I need medication. I need a therapist. And she was just kind of like a deer in headlights.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And then she prescribed it, the medication to me, but never followed up. So, there's more work to be done, especially on the policy level, so that's a part of the reason why I did the Postpartum Revolution trip was so that we could advocate for moms to have the same exact treatment in California, all over the country. There's no reason why moms in North Dakota or in Tennessee, where their reproductive rights are in jeopardy and, are constantly up for debate and on the ballot box, but there's no reinforcement or there's no help once the babies are here for mom.
Right. Yeah. It's one of the big reasons why, one of the things that we advocate for, and we're pushing for at the federal level is Momnibus, which is a whole bunch of legislative actions that would address all these things from maternal mental health to, all the issues of reshaping the perinatal workforce so we can have more doulas and midwives and, a whole range of other aspects. The other thing at the March Dimes we've done is like introduce a lot of programs to provide additional levels of support. So for example, we even transferred to a virtual program around supportive pregnancy care, really group prenatal care, which really allows women to go through their prenatal care, obviously checking in with their physician, but also checking in with other moms that are pregnant along with them. So that you can have an honest conversation with other women that might be experiencing some of the same things. And then continuing that kind of group care into the postpartum phase. Right. Because just when the baby when the baby comes, just the beginning of your problems, right? It's like now you have a whole set of other issues to deal with, and you still need that support, postpartum as well. And the last thing I have to say too is going back to this issue of how the healthcare system needs to acknowledge the unique challenges that Black and brown women face, and how we know that the healthcare system does not listen to us and respond to us in the ways that we need. We introduced an implicit bias training program for healthcare professionals about 2 years ago. We trained 15,000 healthcare professionals to recognize their implicit bias. And now we have a new component which starts to go through different scenarios. So you can play out what scenarios look like to see where your implicit bias actually does show up in your day-to-day interactions with your patients. So, and not just doctors and nurses, it's really even like the front desk receptionist who like
all
gives you a
through.
side eye when you show your Medicaid card, right? Which is like all of a sudden now I don't want to come back to this clinic because I don't feel valued. I feel diminished, right? And that happens far too often. And so there are all these things we need, but we just have to do this at scale if we're going to see these kinds of outcomes improve in our lifetime.
Yeah. Wow. That's really encouraging to hear all the steps that you all have taken across the board, because it's a huge undertaking when you're dealing with a system that's already at so many levels, even as you mentioned, from receptionist all the way up. There's going to be so many biases along the way, and each step along the way is going to have impact. So,
yes,
even as I know the time is going fast, which is unfortunate in a sense, but I did want to kind of tie it back to this idea of the strong Black woman, because you've talked about, the things that you've done on the policy side and things like that. But I'm also curious just how, as you're working in different communities and in communities of color in particular, how people are embracing of this need for support along the way, or is there still this tension of, well, as strong Black women, we don't need to tap into this? I'm just curious how is that conversation going? I'm going to go to Angelina first, since I see you smiling as I'm making those comments.
Well, Stacey has seen my comedy special that we are touring around the country with. I have a whole section that addresses the strong Black woman. Okay? Because that myth, we've got to flip that on its head. Strength is asking for help. Strength is saving the money so that you can pay the help guilt-free. Strength is employing people to make your life easier. Strength is enjoying luxury. As Black women, we are, because we don't have a history of indulging in these kinds of things, we don't have, when we are suddenly able to, we kind of had this guilt, or or there's shame and judgment from family, from friends. There's a whole thing behind it. But I always tell people, strength is really truly in asking and allowing people to help you. My problem was that I didn't know what to ask for to be helped. And that's where the preparation for me would have come in. Had I known what to expect, I would have been prepared with what to ask for. Yeah. But then also allowing people to help you. I allowed my therapist to help me. That was her job. I allowed my mom to help me, but I didn't allow my cousins and my other supportive family members to help until I was in crisis. And that's what I know, moving forward, that I tell Black women and mothers in general, we feel like we should be able to do it all. Carry a baby in the front, one in the back, push one in the stroller, answer work emails, on a call, on a Zoom, all at the same. Mama, we ain't got to do all that. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We need to have a seat. But the strong Black woman, asks for help. So sisters, let's start asking for help and receiving the help.
Yeah.
So good.
There's no question Black women have had to be incredibly resilient over many, many generations. And it's funny because I go back to the book about leaning in, remember Sheryl Sandberg? And I remember thinking how absurd, the idea to have the choice to lean in. Should I lean in or not? It's like, well, Black women haven't actually had that choice, right? We don't have a choice but to lean in, like our families are dependent on us. Like, the world falls apart if we fall apart. Like it's actually, that's how it is. Right. And so I think we can be both proud of that. We have proven time and time again that we are always ready and willing to rise the challenge and to do what is necessary. But we have to also acknowledge that has traditionally come at an extraordinary cost to our health and to our both mental health and physical health. There was research done on weathering, the idea of weathering, which is kind of how our health deteriorates over time because of just the lived experience of being a Black woman in this country. And that weathering then has an impact on our birth outcomes for our own babies. That stress and anxiety layered on layered, year after year, generation after generation, actually deteriorates our lives and our physical health. And that is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
It is not okay for us to live in a way where we're constantly on adrenaline,
Right.
constantly on fight or flight, because that eventually wears us down to the point where we see all these chronic health conditions.
Yeah.
I mean, I've told this story many stories. Angelina's heard me say this about my own experience of growing up with my dad, who was a physician, and him having all these patients that have stress and anxiety. But what they also had was chronic obesity, hypertension, diabetes. But he often mostly diagnosed them with anxiety first. Like, and this was in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Like he even saw and recognized, and although I don't know that there was as much research out at that time, but he was actually documenting the connection between stress and anxiety and these other chronic health conditions. And I carried that thought. I have carried that thought with me my entire life until I walked into the offices of the Marshalls, became the president and CEO, and started to see the actual research, the evidence around this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here we are today. All we can do right now is to say, one, we have got to make sure that women, especially women of color, find a place and a space in this country. And I call out the United States in particular, although we could say this is a global thing, but in this particular country, we have a unique experience of having to still address the legacy and of slavery that has, and we're still feeling the effects of that today. And what we ought to do in this generation that we are the leaders of right now is to call attention to it and to try to do as much as we can to reverse the impact so that Ava, who is Angelina's daughter, or my daughters, Maddie and Savannah, do not have to continue to live in a world in which they are continued to be, they're subjected to the same level of kind of oppressiveness that so many Black and brown women have to face in this country. We have to do everything we can. Fortunately, we're standing on the shoulders of many Black women and brown women who fought very hard. It is our job to continue that fight and to elevate that fight, elevate it, do even more, you know?
So important. And you're right in terms of the legacy and just the need to move things forward. I mean, it's even encouraging and sobering to hear the story about your father as well, documenting those things at that time. Because as you mentioned, that wasn't highly documented. I mean, there's more evidence for that now, clearly, and just the detrimental effects of racism on mental health and so many other aspects of our health, and especially for Black women. So I'm deeply appreciative to what you're both doing in that way. And to wrap up, I just wanted to also just hear what gives you hope in this moment with all the challenges that clearly still need to be addressed in so many ways around mom health, mom and baby health, mom's mental health. But what gives you hope moving forward?
Well, I'll start. What gives me hope is seeing the impact of the work, seeing the impact of, an idea that I had, or, to take a risk and share the fact that I was admitted to a psychiatric facility on social media, and to see moms open up to me and ask me to help them check into a psychiatric facility and facilitate that. That gives me hope.
Wow.
It gives me hope, to see my daughter Ava and to see that she, at 6 years old, has the language, not quite the understanding just yet, but she has the language of the postpartum revolution, postpartum depression, helping moms, helping families, helping babies. That gives me hope. There's still a lot more work to do. On the postpartum revolution road trip, I recently met with Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, who is, she's working on the Momnibus, and she's
awesome.
A dynamite woman who, like Stacy, I had an immediate connection with. I also had a very great policy meeting with Congresswoman Yvette Clarke on the Hill. And both women are super supportive of my mission and my goal to help formulate legislation to support new moms and to work with those of us who worked on the bills on California to make federal legislation, that gives me hope.
Wow.
The fact that these women are willing to meet with me, an average woman who, as Hollywood says, no one knows who you are, but these women took the time to hear me and to meet with me and their policy directors so that we can help moms who are in similar situations, but also help moms avoid similar situations.
Yeah.
That gives me hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
I think what gives me hope is just the momentum. Again, just seeing how we're having different kind of conversations where, we weren't having these conversations before. I can see minds being open to really understanding these issues. I can see people not being so quick to diminish. If a woman has a problem with her pregnancy, it must be her fault. It's not her fault, right? And people are starting to say, wait a minute, maybe there's something more systemically wrong here. And that's where in Washington, that's in both sides of the aisle. I see Republicans. When I see Republican members of Congress who are literally authentically moved to tears when they hear a story like from Charles Johnson about losing his wife, Kira, hours after their second child was born. These are human issues. And we're living at a time when there's a lot that doesn't make sense. And there's a lot of craziness that goes on. And there's a lot of things that people don't believe, a lot of facts people just are willing to accept. And a lot of people that other people are willing to dismiss as if their concerns or issues don't matter. And what I'm finding is that at least on the issue of mom and baby health, there is the ability to find some common ground. Yes. We were at an event last week with 2 Republican members of Congress and 2 Democratic members. And one of them said, I love coming to a March of Dimes event because I think this is the one place where Republicans and Democrats can agree. And they weren't talking about just March of Dimes. They were really talking about the bigger issues that we're working on. But that is encouraging and inspiring to me. So I think we just got to keep that momentum going, right? So
again, I'm deeply appreciative both of you for the work that you're doing. Also for both of you taking time to come on this podcast. I know this is going to be something that our listeners are going to really resonate with. Any places they should go to find out? Thank you for doing this
too. You're doing a great job. We appreciate it.
It gives me hope that you as a Black man are giving the sisters the space.
That's right.
Least I can do.
Not only the space, but the awareness of your audience to value these issues. I'm just like, come on, that gives me hope, Black man. Come on now.
That's the least I can do.
And here it says, a Yale professor and researcher, a man of faith, and a sports and hip hop fan is our host. How about that?
For balance.
Bring it full circle. I'm deeply appreciative. And again, just to see what you all are doing as Black women. So encouraging. The least I can do to amplify it because your voices are being heard, need to be heard more. So I'm playing my part. I'm in the background this time. So deeply appreciate both of you. Thanks so much for being here. Check out things at March of Dimes, AngelinaSpicer.com. More information, Postpartum Revolution. Definitely important work and appreciate what you're both doing. Thanks so much.
Thank you.